Imagine this scenario in your head. You were just hired by BHVR as their newest game producer. You and the rest of your team, led by your creative director, create and publish the Tokyo Ghoul DLC and the upcoming Steady Pulse chapter. Both chapters turn out to be a massive success. Ken Kaneki is being played by a fourth of the killer player base for how fun and accessible he is to all skill levels, and Onryo Rose is shaping up to be a hit for survivors as well. As a reward for the back-to-back successes, the higher-ups allow you to make one change of your choice to every killer in the game. With this kind of power at your fingertips, what would you do with it? It could be a buff, it could be a nerf, it could be a quality of life change. In this video, I'll be going over what singular change I would make to every killer in this game if I knew anything about coding past It's Hard as Balls and I worked at BHVR. Before we officially start, I quickly want to give a thank you shout out to Larry and Fuzz for helping me collect the B-roll for this video. I most likely wouldn't have gotten this out on time without his help. Without any further ado, let's hop right in. For Trapper, I would do something that is typically a common request when people are given the question of how to buff him, and that is making Trapper Sack base kit. Why Trapper doesn't start with all his traps at this point in the game's lifespan is beyond me, so I would make it so he doesn't have to search for his traps at the start of the game. It'd help his early game out a ton, and it'd make setting up his trap web significantly easier. I think Wraith's in a pretty good spot as it is right now, so I would simply just let him pick up survivors while he's cloaked. He'd still have the normal movement speed when carrying people around, it would just make the survivor float in midair to other survivors, which I think would be really funny. One thing about Hillbilly that's bugged me is how his cosmetics are assigned. The headpiece includes his torso for some reason, while the body piece is just his legs, and it can make creating a cosmetic combination for him feel really awkward sometimes. So I would probably see if I could get it so his entire body is the body piece and only his head is the headpiece, like many killers nowadays have. Delete her from the game. Okay, in all seriousness, if I could make one change to Nurse that isn't taking the easy way out and removing or reworking her entire power, I would make it so if Nurse gets stunned by any means, whether it be from Decisive Strike, a pallet, head-on, etc., she loses all of her blink charges and has to recharge them all before she can use them again. That way there can actually be some kind of counterplay for her besides just dying in a corner and hoping you and your team can gen rush her before she kills you all. Ideally she can't recharge blinks while in fatigue as well, but I can only make one change, so yeah, this is the thing I'm gonna be rolling with here. Rework Tombstone Piece. Yes, this add-on got nerfed a bit in 8.4.0 when Myers got buffed a little bit, but the very concept of this idea remains bullshit and outdated. I'm fine with Judith's Tombstone remaining as is, since it's required for an achievement, Myers gets a speed nerf when it's active, and it takes forever for him to charge it up, especially if he's going for said achievement. So I would just change Tombstone Piece to where it either only works on survivors fully depleted of stock, or it only works on survivors on Death Hook. One of the two. For Hag, this would be an incredibly easy one. Buff her to 4.6 meters per second. Hag is one of the worst chasers in the game due to lacking no chase power outside of her traps, but that relies on survivor mistakes to get value from, and if they don't get set off or get disabled, Hag has a really rough time chasing people if she isn't running the niche but admittedly pretty fun Chag build. Hag being buffed to 4.6 would not only buff this build, but it would also make Hag able to at the very least chase normally if she's having a hard time with traps, which would help her out quite a bit, I'd say. She needs more than just this, but it's a start. I would say Doctor's in a pretty decent spot as he currently stands, so I would simply add back the effects old Doctor used to have prior to his rework, as they did look super neat. Only maybe make them a little less intrusive and intense so it potentially doesn't get in the way of survivor gameplay. One thing that seriously puts me off from playing Huntress more than I do is being forced to hear her humming all game. The lullaby, in my opinion, gets really grating to listen to after a while, and while I totally agree survivors need to hear it for gameplay reasons, like imagine a fully undetectable Huntress, Jesus fuck. I run Were-Elk specifically because the humming's easier to tune out on him, and Baba Yaga's lullaby makes me want to rip my ears off. So being able to toggle the lullaby off for myself when playing as Huntress would make me play her more often and experiment with more skins outside of Were-Elk. Bubba's change is something you'd hear every Hillbilly main prior to Overdrive say they'd change, and that's removing his overheat. For those unaware, Bubba is able to overheat his chainsaw if he charges it for too long without using it, and overheating automatically puts him into tantrum. I very rarely play Bubba, so I completely forgot this overheat still existed until relatively recently. So I would probably buff him by removing that, but keeping the tantrum from colliding with stuff with the chainsaw. Freddy's in a really solid spot currently, so coming up with something for him is actually quite hard. What I ended up deciding on was to rework his blue dress add-on into something else. What that something else is, I have no idea, but literally anything would be better than playing Old Snare Freddy when the current one is leagues better. I think the paintbrush add-on referencing Old Freddy is pretty sweet, but blue dress making Freddy his previous version easily makes it his worst add-on, and I would love to see that thing get changed. Throughout Pig's lifespan, the reverse bear traps have been very abusable at times, and countermeasures have been made to try and limit their ability to force head pops with no counterplay for Survivor. The last time I remember this happening was with Ultimate Weapon prior to its gutting, so the change I'd give Pig would be for individual survivors' search progress in the jigsaw boxes to be maintained and instead regress their progress if left unattended. That way, constantly harassing survivors with screaming perks can't just make the boxes take 10 years. Insert nerf Pig joke here, I know, but the goal here is to prevent screaming perks like Ultimate Weapon and anything new in the future from cheesing their way to head pops. It'd also make Pig and 2v8 a lot more bearable if she gets paired with Doctor whenever they get added in. With Steady Pulse coming out, Clown is going to lose access to Rapid Brutality, a perk that paired amazingly well with his bottles thanks to the haste and hinder stacking changes. As a response, I propose slightly buffing the yellow bottle's numbers a little bit in order to help compensate, as the two together felt really nice, and losing that is admittedly a shame. Spirit is notorious for being a pain in the ass to deal with, especially for those who are hard of hearing or noise sensitive like myself. This is due to her counterplay relying entirely on sound, and Spirit being able to act the split second she exits her phasing, while Spirit herself is, in my opinion at least, very easy to play if you have a good pair of headphones and your volumes turned up really high. My change for Spirit would technically be a nerf, but I would make some kind of visual for Spirit and her power to help hard of hearing players and noise sensitive players. Like a very faint glow here and there, or being just barely visible from time to time. Something you'd have to look really hard and pay very close attention to notice. You know the mixtape add-ons, right? A set of 5 add-ons that have their usual effects but come with the bonus of adding a new music layer to Legion's chase theme? Well, that bonus can also be heard by survivors, so anyone who has religiously listened to this game's soundtrack like myself can determine Legion's add-ons just by entering chase before the add-ons even do anything. Legion's chase theme is also a certified banger, so my change would be a minor buff and a quality of life change where the mixtapes no longer add their layers, but instead an extra cosmetic slot or a vanity exclusive add-on slot that allows for chase music customization with the mixtapes would be added. That way the Legion player can jam to their favorite tunes without compromising their add-on slots, and survivors can't just single out the mixtape add-ons before they've even done anything because of the chase music change. Plague's change is simple, give her a chase theme. Honest to God, why does she not have one yet? She and Huntress are both overdue for their own chase themes, but I'd prefer Plague get one first since I have another change for Huntress I already talked about. This is something I think a ton of us would kill for. For Ghostface, I would simply make it so survivors on Hook cannot reveal him and kick him out of his power. This is something I'm sure so many of us have experienced at some point with Ghosty, and I think this doesn't make any sense as to why this exists. It feels like shit too, so I think a good place to start with buffing Ghostface would be to make something like this a thing. Demogorgon's pretty decent currently. His power's pretty decent, his map traversal's pretty decent. Demo will probably always be the most pretty decent killer of all time. However, with everything and everyone around him getting stronger, Demo is slowly going down the tiers, not by his own fault, but because of power creep. As a result, I think a pretty nice buff for Demo would be to allow portal placement at any time, but placing a 7th portal will automatically remove the oldest one. This would allow Demo to get rid of useless portals from areas of the map with completed gens, which is one of Demo's biggest problems regarding the portal part of his power. And it would overall help Demo pressure important areas more effectively later in the game. Oni generally has pretty decent add-ons, but a lot of them are just number changes, and the only notable ones that give new effects are his Eerie add-ons. Unfortunately though, both of his Eerie add-ons are also ass. My change for Oni would be to rework his Eerie's, specifically the Family Crest, since getting value out of it requires actively missing with your power or skill issuing when chasing survivors with it. Even if you use it for info, you're probably just better off with Barbecue and Chili or Infectious Fright or something rather than wasting precious power time for info. At least the Renjiro Glove add-on is a niche, albeit pretty cool effect that can be worth running if you want to try something different. The Family Crest is just not worth it by comparison. Deathslinger is in a fairly decent spot overall, but he can be a pain to use, well, sometimes without Eerie Coin since his gen pressure is poor, he's 4.4, and depending on the loop, he can have a really hard time dealing with pallets. As a result, I would reduce his terror radius to 24 meters so he has a much better chance at catching survivors off guard and stopping them from pre-running to a pallet the moment his terror radius is heard before he even has a chance to get in shooting range to try and stop them. The terror radius change in particular would also give him much better synergies with Monitor and Abuse and his terror radius add-ons, opening up build potential. Okay, so for Pyramid Head, I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. We all know what this change is going to be, but I just can't pick one in particular. My change is going to be submitting a request to get all of Pyramid Head's add-ons reworked. Technically, I did a single thing, it's just that single thing will affect a lot of his add-ons since he's notorious for having what's probably the worst set of add-ons in the game. Bite me. Blight is going to be a similar deal to Nurse. If he gets stunned by any means, all his tokens will be depleted and he can't use his power till they all recharge. Since Ultimate Houndmaster has shown us that behavior finally got power skins to function, now is the perfect opportunity to get Victor some cosmetics. Come on, we've been requesting it for ages. The time is now. Top Hat and Monocle Victor is within our grasp. The 3 Twins players and I will be thrilled if this could happen. Please, behavior. Trickster's scheduled to get a complete rework later down the line according to behavior, but if I had to make a change right now, I would revert main event back to how it used to work, but remove the timer to use it. This would allow Trickster to use main event whenever he wants, which would make it extremely deadly for camping situations, but he still has to work for it rather than have it every 5 seconds in chase. Nemesis's kit is pretty decent as it currently stands, but one thing that's always plagued him have been how uncontrollable and RNG reliant his zombies can be sometimes. Weirdly enough, they remain the same the entire game as Nemesis himself tears up. So my proposed change would be making Nemesis's zombies tear up as he does. Tier 2 could make the zombies a little bit faster, while Max Infection could make the zombies immune to flashlights or have a bigger detection range or better attention span or something like that. Just a little love to the zombies base kit and encourage the zombie add-ons a little more, even though everyone's probably just gonna spam Marvin's Blood and Liquor Tongue anyway. So Pinhead as a character, I didn't exactly know what to do outside of the obvious stuff like original pain abuse. But then I had a match where a Pinhead got denied a down on me because I used his own body to break a chain shot and I made it to a window because of it. As a result of that little experience as Survivor and being the ultimate form of fuck you I've ever seen towards a Pinhead, the change I'm going to make is making it so chains cannot break from Pinhead himself going through them. I'm aware this is just me being sympathetic and feeling bad for that Pinhead's skill issue, but that shit never feels good. I've experienced it before as well. It's not fun. Artist herself is in a pretty decent spot, so I decided to look elsewhere for her changes. After going through her cosmetics, there's only one thing a lot of them had in common, and it's the weapon cosmetics are all just mid. Granted, there's a few exceptions here and there that make the weapons actually have color instead of just being entirely black, and the recent artist weapon skins we've been getting lately have been improving in quality, but I think I would have the art team go back to her older cosmetics and change up their weapon skins to look more appealing. Contrary to what a lot of people think about Sadako, I actually quite like Sadako in her current iteration, and I'll never quite understand what makes countering her so hard for other people, since it's literally just grab a tape the second the TVs turn on and go deposit it once you hit about 3 or 4 condemn bars, rinse and repeat. And also not skill issuing at loop since her chaseability is her weakest aspect. That said, one of her former best add-ons, Eerie Tape, got absolutely butchered in her current iteration, being easily her worst add-on. Just about entirely removing Condemn for the benefit of the TVs not turning off upon teleport is a terrible trade. That is on par for a fucking GameStop trade. So yeah, my change for her would be to rework Eerie Tape, since it is by far one of the worst Eerie's in the entire game, and it's absolutely not worth the price in the Blood Web currently. Dredge is currently one of my favorite killers in this game, easily my favorite in terms of the original characters. I find it an incredibly immersive experience, especially during Nightfall, and proper positioning of the Remnant can make it a fairly decent, albeit nothing crazy, anti-loop tool. Playing poorly with Dredge in inconveniently locked lockers can be annoying, yes, but other than that, I think it's in a decent spot currently, especially since he doesn't sound like a vacuum cleaner and he isn't heard across half the map anymore. Except for one thing, it's map reliance. Dredge's map mobility is overall pretty solid, but the reliance on locker spawns can make some generators unpressurable if RNG doesn't roll in its favor. As a result, my change for Dredge would be to make the game forcibly spawn more lockers all around the map if Dredge is detected as the killer. That way Dredge's map reliance, the one major thing that, in my opinion at least, is holding Dredge back, can be reduced a fair bit. I'm fully expecting to get shit on in the comments for this take, but my change for Wesker is going to involve adjusting his collision detection. Wesker is a relatively easy killer for people to pick up and play, but truly mastering him currently involves taking advantage of how buggy and poorly programmed Wesker's collision detection is to slide off stuff he normally shouldn't. This isn't a problem most of the time, but the issue comes when this detection is also able to betray him post hitting someone. I'm sure we've all had moments where a survivor's thrown and they just slide off a tree or a rock or something and end up denying an injure or a down, and the chase gets extended because of it. Or a survivor gets slammed into a singular stray air molecule and they get shit on because of it. The point is, Wesker's collision in general is just a huge mess. And my entire game designing philosophy basically boils down to, if your character is over-reliant on exploiting bugs or janky shit to be consistently good, then there's a problem with the character. With all this said, I am aware that fixing Wesker's collision will kill off a lot of stuff people like about him, and he would be much worse in high-level play. So ideally, Wesker's collision or bound mechanic is changed in a way that still permits the flashy stuff, while also not denying obvious hits or a single atom of carbon dioxide causing a health state to be taken. Otherwise, Wesker would need a lot of base kit buffs as compensation for getting shot in the kneecaps. Knight is an easy one. He is well known for being one of the buggiest killers in the game, and something about him breaks seemingly every other patch. There's a reason I have him, Twins, and Houndmaster as the 3 anchor beings keeping DbD held together. So my change for Knight is simply to give him an entire recode in an attempt to de-spaghettify him. My change for Skull Merchant. Jesus, where do you even start with her? There is so much wrong with Merchant currently that it makes it so easy to fix something, but so hard to pick what to fix as the only change you can make to her. After a lot of consideration, I think the option I'm going to go with is reverting the nerf that makes it so vaulting a pallet or a window makes survivors unscannable. I didn't mind playing Merchant prior to her gutting, but that singular change basically guaranteed you'll never see me in pubs playing her. This change being reverted would make me at least somewhat willing to still play her outside of customs. Thank God Larry rolled this killer in the wheel when he and I were assigning ourselves the killers we'd play for the background footage. He's definitely got bigger balls than I do to play this killer seriously right now. Singularity I would have easily just made Soma photo base kit if this were prior to his massive set of buffs last year, but now that they've happened, the one change I'd make to him now would be to nerf him by removing the auto aim from the biopods. Listen, as much as I love Singularity, If I were forced to main a top tier, it'd be him. The auto-aim just makes tagging people effortless on a shit ton of maps if you set up your pod network well. I'm aware this was made a thing primarily to help console players, but I think this is a little much currently. Xenomorph is a rather decent killer who can feel oppressive when not countered properly, but can feel awful when survivors know how to use the flame turrets properly and consistently, especially since Xeno has no reliable answer for 2 turrets together. The reason she isn't played more, however, is due to the turrets feeling frustrating as the killer player for so many people. A big part of why this is because the turrets are constantly beeping, the flames getting shot at you, the Xeno screaming in pain, all while trying to see and chase a survivor. It's a sensory overload. Because of this, my proposed change is a quality of life adjustment to make the flame turrets less intrusive on the senses in order to not overwhelm players nearly as much. Make their volume when attacking quieter, make the flames less intense. Stuff like that to help players not feel overwhelmed when getting countered. While there is another change I'd make to Xeno involving the turrets, I'd rather value addressing the reason the character isn't played more rather than my own little minor idea. Needs of the many over needs of the few, you know? Chucky's been through a lot. He's seen the height of highs and has been through the lowest of lows. Right now, I think he's in a middle decent ground, and I don't really have any real change suggestions gameplay-wise. However, one thing that I think was a huge missed opportunity was having Tiffany's human spirit pick up survivors over Charles Lee Ray's on the Tiffany skin. So my change would be a quality of life thing that would make the Tiffany skin show the Tiffany spirit, especially since Tiffany's also quite popular on Chucky as well. Unknown is in such a perfect spot currently in all major aspects that I wouldn't change anything at all about it. The only change I'd make would be to request the art team to make more skins and hurry up on that Detective Unknown skin from the art contest a while back. Unknown's skin selection is pretty decent, but also a little bit shallow. So, like Dredge, please capitalize on the skin potential of our favorite skinwalker demon thing. I prefer to go mainless and just play whoever I feel like on that day, but I have killers I prefer to play over others. Vecna just happens to be my favorite in this game. I like him a lot, as I'm sure you all know. I literally wrote an entire Google Doc guide on him, and he's the only character I went out of my way to learn the specifics of. That said, one of his biggest issues is RNG, such as how often survivors roll the best of the magic items, the interlopers, as well as the 2 D20 items, the Eye and Hand of Vecna. In the hands of a competent player, both D20 items can make Vecna's life hell, especially if obtained early. This is why I value Bag of Holding so much outside of mimic attacks being funny, and that add-on greatly reduces the speed of survivors getting a hold of the interlopers and the D20 items. As a result, my change for Vecna would be to increase the Eye and Hand item rarities, as rolling a D20 isn't that difficult if people are constantly fishing the chest for it, and those 2 items in particular make Vecna's job so much harder when all of his spells are pretty counterable even without their armors. At least the interlopers and the other normal armors are able to be disabled with Dispelling Sphere. That spell does fuck all to the D20 items, so you can't even outplay them with that spell like you can with the other ones. Dracula, I think, is well designed and in a very good spot, so one change I'd make that I think would be very funny would be to make the wolf and bat forms pick up survivors without turning back into the vampire form. Just use that smoky form that pops up when breaking resources or damaging gens while in those forms. However, I do think that if Dracula does have this, all of his powers would need around 3 to 4 seconds of recharge after hooking someone. Mainly to stop Batform from just zooming off instantly once the hooking is done, as I think that would be kind of nuts if left as is. Houndmaster's change would be similar to Twins' proposed change. Let a cosmetic slot exclusive to Snug be available. This would allow people to use dog cosmetics and not be forced into running $20 poodle for the poodle. Speaking of, doing this would also likely allow Ultimate Houndmaster to be unlinked if behavior's cool with removing that one menu animation she has. Believe it or not, I think Kaneki's power as a concept is completely fine. I don't actively spam Dead Hard or cracked medkit add-ons very much, so while I do find the power to be annoying at times, I'm way more tolerant of it compared to a lot of people I see complaining about it. That said, I do absolutely agree Kaneki needs to get a few more nerfs since he is definitely overtuned still. And I think the perfect change for that would be to make it so Kaneki cannot cancel mid-leap. This would increase his skill floor a fair bit, since with this change, Kaneki would have to actually think about where to aim rather than just aiming in a survivor's general direction and pressing a button upon being directly behind them with nothing the survivor can do about it unless they're extremely close to a resource when it happens. Like, imagine if Blight could just cancel a rush right on top of you without hitting anything. It would just make him a lot more brainless to play and everyone would hate facing him. Overall, while this would definitely be a nerf to Kaneki in gameplay and in accessibility, I do think this would be an overall healthy change to him in the long run. And there you have it. If I were granted the power to make one change to every killer in the game, these would be the changes I would make. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Let me know in the comments below what changes you would personally make if you had to pick one for each killer in the game. And with that in mind, cheers!